I'm speaking to Meg Weston-Smith, the author of Beating the Odds, The Life and Times of E.A. Milne. Thank you for talking to us, Meg. I'd like to start by asking you, what was the impetus behind writing a book that is both a biography of a professional scientist and also very personal to you?
Well, I wanted to understand how the strands of his life fitted together. I knew that he was an astrophysicist of international repute, but I didn't know him as a person. I went to the States during the war. I was an evacuee, and when I came home in 1945, I found that he was very debilitated with Parkinsonism, and this had the effect that he didn't want to talk, and so conversation was very limited. And then he died when I was still at school. But what prompted me to write the book were the Milne lectures sponsored by IBM. And his contemporaries encouraged me, and what's more, they spoke that in his prime he was very energetic, enthusiastic, full of ideas, often controversial ideas, and this was an image I simply didn't know, and so I set out to find him. It involved a lot of reading, of course, and I was very fortunate that he'd written a great number of letters. I was on a steep learning curve. Much of his astrophysics has been well documented, but not his defense work, and he made major contributions in both world wars. And of course, the more I read, the more I wanted to learn, and I became party also to his anxieties and his adversities, financial problems, health difficulties, and bereavement. But I would have liked to have separated the chapters, but it wasn't really possible because the two aspects of his life were so completely interwoven. And he was no ivory tower mathematician. I mean, he was very sensitive, oversensitive in fact. And so emotions and people he met, things people said, played a part. And an example of this is that he devised his theory of relativity simply to refute a remark made by James Jeans.
Which part of the book did you most enjoy writing?
I think the early part. His beginnings, his background, his young early manhood. We talk about austerity today, but times then were very much tougher, and there was no government welfare or help to get to higher education, and he had to win 5 scholarships to get to Cambridge. Because I myself have taught maths and physics at school, I think I was particularly interested in his school days, and his headmaster did wonders for him. My father was good across the board at school, he was literate and so on, but it was his headmaster who steered him into mathematics. And then the First World War played a huge part, as did A.V. Hill, and it was the ballistics that my father did during the war that at the armistice took him straight to a fellowship at Trinity College, Cambridge, and he hadn't completed his degree, so this was something of an unusual feat. And of course, to be in Cambridge in the 1920s, when all the physics was being developed and discovered, it was a marvellous time to be there, and he was in the thick of it.
Is there a part of the book that you particularly want to highlight to readers?
Yes. When my father arrived at Oxford in 1929, he did an enormous amount to upgrade and transform the attitude of the university to science, and he pushed in all directions. He became quite a force in the university. The Mathematical Institute was a notable triumph, and he and Harry Plaskett set up a centre for astrophysics, which was acknowledged to be of world standing, and it attracted Rhodes scholars. But also, my father instituted weekly colloquia, and at the time they were an innovation, and they were much welcomed by the students, and they've told me that they were very impressed when people such as Einstein and Hubble would come and talk to them. But as well as that, I would like to emphasize the human dimension to science. that emotions play a part, circumstances, people. And my father did have a great run of luck. He was in the right place at the right time, but he also had grievous misfortunes. His father died when he was quite young, and then he had to take care of his mother and brother. He had a serious illness as a young man, which was the cause of his Parkinsonism, which started in his late 40s. He lost his house in 1944 to the V2s in World War II, and he suffered the bereavement of two wives. So that was quite a lot to contend with. But he did contend with them. I think he was determined to. He showed grit, tenacity, and above all, he had very strong Christian beliefs, and this helped him enormously. And there's always been discussion about the relationship between religion and science. In his mind, there was no dichotomy at all. In fact, part of his cosmology is founded on his Christianity, and he had absolutely no doubt that Christianity was a fundamental and integral part of his scientific outlook.
Meg Weston-Smith, thank you very much for talking to us about your fascinating book.